Hello everybody, welcome back. After a long time I'm taking out a new PPT on UAE value added tax, export, import and designated zones. It will give you an idea about exports, imports and the designated zones and how you should value them. Now what is exports? Exports, goods departing state or provision of service to a person whose place of establishment or fixed establishment is outside state. It means we will consider it as an export if the goods are going out of the state and the place of establishment or the fixed establishment is outside the state. Now, what will be the place of supply? In export of goods, if it is inside the state, if supply include export to a place outside implementing state, recipient of goods in implementing state is not registered for tax in state of destination and total export from same supplier to this state does not exceed mandatory registration threshold for said state. It means if the total export which is there is the person is not registered under tax and the total threshold has also not been met by them, so that will be the place of supply. Now, place of supply, article 27, export of goods. Now that this one was for inside the state. If it is done inside the state within the territory of UAE, then it will not be taxable. But then export of goods outside the states, if supply include export to customer registered for tax purpose in one of the implementing state, recipient of good is not registered for tax in implementing state to which export is made and total export from same supplier to implementing state exceed mandatory registration threshold for that state. Now there are two cases in this. If supply include export to customer registered for tax purpose in one of the implementing state and the recipient of the good is not registered in the implementing state and the total value of the total export of the supplier to the implementing state exceeds the mandatory registration. Now, in one cases the tax will be there, in the other case the tax won't be there. Now, zero rated supply. Article 45(1) of DL. Direct or indirect export to outstanding implementing state as specified in ER of decree law. Direct export, Article 1 of ER. Export of goods to a destination outside of implementing state where the supplier is responsible for arranging transport or appointing an agent to do so on his behalf. Now that is export of goods to a destination outside. Indirect export, export of goods to a destination outside implementing state where overseas customer is responsible for arranging collection of goods from supplier in state and who exports the good himself or has appointed an agent to do so. Now that is indirect. Now where he is arranging, direct mein he was doing it, and in this he is arranging it and also arranging the agent and somebody has come in on his behalf. Direct export shall be zero rated if following conditions are met. Now, otherwise it will be taxable. In this case, it will be zero rated if goods are physically exported to a place outside the implementing state or are part into the custom suspension regime in accordance with GCC common laws within 90 days of date of supply. Official and commercial evidence of export or customs suspension retained by exporter. It means these two conditions are met, then only it will be zero rated. It should be within 90 days and the official commercial evidence should be maintained. Then only it will be zero rated. Now, indirect export, when it will be zero rated or else it will be taxable. Goods are physically exported to place outside the implementing state or are put into the customs suspension regime in accordance with the GCC within 90 days of date of supply under agreement agreed by supplier and overseas customer at or before date of supply. Again the same thing, it is 90 days. Overseas customer obtains official and commercial evidence of export custom suspension in accordance with GCC common custom law and provides supplier a copy. Goods are not used, altered in between supply and export custom suspension except to extent necessary to prepare good for export or good. It means we did not do anything on it, we did not do any changes on it except to do some certain arrangements to make it necessary for export. Goods don't leave the state in possession of passenger, crew member of aircraft ship. They don't leave. The possession is there with the same person. For Article 30, movement of goods into designated zones from a place in state or supply of goods to a designated zone not considered as export. It means movement of goods into the designated zones, which are the zero rated zones, from a place in state or supply of a good to a designated zone is not considered as an export. I hope I am clear about it. How am I going? Now, zero rated supply articles. Official evidence. What all evidence has to be maintained? Export docs issued by local Emirate Customs Department in respect to goods leaving state. There should be a commercial evidence, airway bill, bill of lading, consignment note, certificate of shipment. This should be maintained. Proof of export should identify following: supplier and consignor, goods and value, export destination, mode of transport and route of transport. Everything should be made clear in it. Extension of time. FTA may extend 90 days time mentioned in A31 and 2 if supplier applied in writing and either of the following is applied. Circumstance beyond, if it is like the supplier is writing them that certain circumstances have come which were beyond his control, and recipient of the good have prevented or prevent export of good within 90 days, or due to natural nature of supply it is not practicable for supplier to export the goods within 90 days, then only in these two circumstances the FTA might extend it. The time duration might extend. International transport, zero rated. Again, zero rated, Article 45, subsection 2, DL. International transport of passenger and goods which starts and ends in state or passes through its territory, including services related to such transport. It means of passengers and goods which starts and ends in state. It is international transport of passenger of goods which is being done in the state only, will not be considered as an export or import, and it will be done at a zero rated thing. Indirect export includes supply of goods in a departure area of an airport or port to a passenger of an aircraft or vessel if goods are intended to leave state in possession of the passenger. Supplier has obtained and retained evidence such as details of boarding pass of passenger that passenger intends to leave for destination outside the implementing state. It means they are just parked there to be sent to another place. It is not that the goods are being consumed or are for the particular state. So if it is for the mediocre transportation thing, it will be done at zero rated. Other points. Now, zero rated. If person exporting goods in accordance with A30 does not export within period of 90 days or longer period allowed by FTA, tax shall be charged on supply at rate that would have been done but due on supply if it was made in state. What does it mean? If he does not do it in 90 days or the longer period which has been allowed, then tax shall be charged as a normal supply which has been due if it was made in state. For A30, supply of goods shall be zero rated if goods that would otherwise have been exported or destroyed or cease to exist in circumstance beyond control of both supplier and recipient of goods. If it gets destroyed or some problems comes up, then it will be zero rated. Export of service. Export of service zero rated in following cases. If following conditions are met: services supplied to recipient who doesn't have POR in implementing state and who is outside state at time of service performed. It means services supplied to the recipient who doesn't have a interest in the implementing state and who is outside of the state, then it will be zero rated. Services not supplied directly in connection with real estate is situated in state or improvement to real estate or directly in connection with movable personal asset situated in state at time of services performed. if the services are actually performed outside the implementing states or are arranging of services that are actually performed outside the implementing, these two conditions have to be met, that it was being performed for outside the state and outside and actually being performed for outside. A supply consists of facilitation of outbound tour packages for that part of the service. It means anything which is being like for a gestation period in between, and actually it is being done outside the state, or the supply is being done, everything is being done outside the state, it will be done as zero rated. Export of service. Export to 831A. Supply of service shall be zero rated if supply is made under agreement, whether directly or directly with recipient of service who is non-reside, if following conditions are met. Now, what are the conditions? Performance of service is, or it is reasonably foreseeable that performance of service will be received in state by another person, including but not limited to an employee or director of the non-resident recipient of services. 19. Now, it is being received by somebody who is not a resident. It is reasonably foreseeable at the time agreement is entered into that other person in state will receive services in the course of making supplies for which input tax is not recoverable in full. Now, these two conditions have to be seen, that he should be a non-resident and the input tax is not being received on that, as per the Article 54 of Decree Law. These two conditions only have to be met. If they are met, then only it is zero rated, or else it is not. Export of telecommunication services shall be subject to zero rated in following situation. A supply of telecommunication services by telecommunication supplier who has a POR in state to a telecommunication supplier who has POR outside implementing states. Supply of telecommunication services by a telecommunication supplier who has a POR in state to a person who is not a telecommunication service and who has POR outside state for telecommunication, that is initiated outside implement. Now, the crux is that basically it's quite confusing. The crux is that the services should have been performed outside the state, or it is being performed for outside somebody. It is not being performed inside the state. Place where supply initiated, place of person who commences the supply, if not person who pause in return of supply, if not person who contracts for purpose of supply. So that will be determining the place where the supply has initiated. Import, arrival of goods from abroad into state or receipt of services from outside the state. That is import. That is, we are receiving some goods outside the state. Article 48, subsection 1 of the DL. If taxable person imports concerned goods or concerned services for his business, he shall be treated as making taxable supply to himself and responsible for all applicable tax obligations and accounting for due tax in respect of such supplies. Any imports which he is doing, he has to pay tax on it. Place of supply article. Import to state, inside the state. If the receipt of the goods does not have a tax registration number in state, recipient does not have the TRN in state, and total export from same supplier in an implementing state to state exceeds mandatory registrations threshold, then it will be inside the state, because it is exceeding the mandatory threshold and it has to be inside the state. Now, import to state, outside the state, receipt of goods does not have TRN and goods are imported from supplier registered for tax in any implemented state from which import is made, and total import from supplier to state do not exceed mandatory registration threshold. Now, again, in this case, it will become the place of supply, the outside the state. The import to state is outside the state. Now, what are designated zones? Designated zone that meets the conditions specified in ER of Decree Law treated as being outside the state. There are certain zones which has been defined, which has been said as designated zones, as zero rated zones. Goods may be transferred from one DZ to another DZ without any tax becoming due. Any transfer between them between any designated zones will be not taxable. Exception to Article 50 ER is specify procedures and conditions for transfer of goods from and to a designated zone, as well as method of keeping, storing and processing such goods there. Now, this has to be specified. If this is not done, then you're not getting it. Any designated zone specified by decision of the cabinet treated as being outside the state and outside implementing state subject to the following conditions. Designated zone is a specific fenced geographical area and has security measures and customs controls in place to monitor entry and exit of individuals and movement of goods to and from the area. Designated zone shall have internal procedures regarding the method of keeping, storing, and processing of goods therein. If this is not done, then you're not getting it. The designated zone should be fenced geographically and properly. Operator of the designated zone complies with the procedures set by the authority. Where designated zone changes manner of operating or no longer meets any of the conditions imposed on it that led to it being specified as a designated zone under the cabinet decision, treated as if being inside the state. If it is not changes in any manner of operating or there are any lapse in it, it will be treated as it is being done inside the state. Any import and export done inside the state will be taxable, so it will become taxable. Transfer of goods between designated zones shall not be subject to tax if the following two conditions are met. Now, these two conditions: where goods or part thereof are not released and are not in any way used or altered during transfer between them. Now, it's like anything has not been done, any amendment has not been done, and it's just a transfer. Where transfer is undertaken in accordance with the rules for custom suspension according to GCC, whatever the custom rules are there, according to that. Where goods are moved between designated zone, FTA may require owner of the goods to provide a financial guarantee for payment of tax, which that person may become liable for should conditions for movement of goods not be met. It requires a financial guarantee that you're paying tax at the particular state, or else you're not allowed to move freely. Where supply of goods is made within designated zone to a person to be used by him or a third person, then POS state unless goods are to be incorporated into, attached to, or otherwise form part of as used in production or sale of another good located in same designated zone which itself is not consumed. Now, if it is being part of it or being attached to it, then place of supply of services is considered to be inside the state if the place of supply is in the designated zone. If the place of supply is in the designated zone, it will be considered inside the state. Place of supply of water or any form of energy shall be considered to be inside the state. Now, this is very important. Place of supply of water or any form of energy shall be considered to be inside the state if the place of supply is in a designated zone. Goods located in a designated zone which owner has not paid tax on will be treated as imported into state by owner. It will be treated as imported into state by owner if goods are consumed by owner unless goods are incorporated into, attached to, or otherwise form part of or are used in the production of another good located in a designated zone which itself is not consumed. Goods are unaccounted for. Any person established, registered, or which has a place of residence in a designated zone shall be deemed to have a place of residence in the state for the purpose of decree law. It will be not like if you are staying there, you're allowed or you have a zero rated tax. It's not that. It's according to the circumstance and all the measures which we have mentioned. Otherwise, you are considered as you are in the state. Now, what are the list of the designated zones? In Abu Dhabi, Free Trade Zone of Khalifa Port, Abu Dhabi Airport Free Zone, Khalifa Industrial Zone. Dubai, Jebel Ali Free Zone, North-South. Dubai Cars and Automotive Zone, Dukams. Dubai Textile City, Free Zone Area in Al Khorz, Free Zone Area in Al Qasis. Dubai Aviation City, Dubai Airport Free Zone. Dubai Designated Sharjah, Hamria Free Zone, Sharjah Airport International Free Zone. In Ajman, Ajman Free Zone. Al Quwain Free Trade Zone in Ahmad bin Rashid Port. Al Quwain Free Trade Zone on Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Road. Ras Al Khaimah Free Trade Zone, Ras Al Khaimah Maritime City Free Zone, Ras Al Khaimah Airport Free Zone. Fujairah Free Zone, Fujairah Oil Industry Zone. Now, these are all our designated zones. You know how to move your industry, how to move your trade. Any help required, I'm always there for you. This is my email ID, middleeast.office@gmail.com. You can anyways contact me and I'll be there. Thank you so much.